Hello, I'm Angel Rojas with DataCorps Technology Solutions. Today is Thursday, September 23rd, and this is your Threat Landscape Update. Thank you for joining us. And in today's update, we're going to be talking about a few things. We've got a bit of a full plate this afternoon or today, and so let's get right to it. Some of the things that we're going to be keeping an eye on for you and we're going to be talking about today. First off, we're continuing our 10 cybersecurity statistics to help you prevent a data breach. We're also going to be talking about video surveillance cameras, and they've been in the news lately. There's been a lot of movement with several manufacturers tied to the Chinese military. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Again, we're going to be talking more about ransomware. There's two types that I wanted to discuss and make you aware of. We're going to be discussing those. We had some news this week regarding that Cassaya breach that happened a few months ago. And we're going to be talking about the FBI's response for that particular incident. And the last two things, we're going to talk about a Mac OS unpatched vulnerability, and we're going to be talking about contingency plans. So it's always a good idea to talk about contingencies for running your business through any kind of a disruption. So first off, we'll talk about our statistic for the week, and that particular one is that 74% of IT managers surveyed said their companies had been successfully phished over the past year. So why is phishing so successful? I think phishing is successful because it taps into emotions. Most of those emails are going to elicit some kind of an emotional response. And when we respond to something emotionally, our guards are down, and we act in a way that we would normally not act. So normally we might be cautious, we might be careful. But for example, if somebody sends us an email with an invoice and says, hey, if you don't pay this, I'm going to sue you, our initial response is probably not going to be rational, but rather it's going to be an emotional one because most of us pay our bills, so why would anybody be suing us? So for me, it's easy to see why phishing attacks are so successful. It's as humans, we've talked about the human factor. We often take the bait. It's easy to get us to take the bait, and the best way to protect from that is to increase awareness and make sure that we're talking about what the bait looks like, and we are discussing it with our teams so that we don't become susceptible to it. So if you have any questions with that, feel free to reach out. I love to talk about it, set up a meeting with me. But moving on, another topic that we definitely need to pay attention to, and I would suggest that you definitely talk to me about, because I've got way more information to share with you about this topic than I can do in video or even in an email format, because it is very, it's complicated. It's complex. There's a lot of moving parts to it. So this video surveillance camera issue, two of the most popular manufacturers of the surveillance cameras, Hikvision and Dahua, have been blacklisted by the U.S. government. So the U.S. government has basically said, do not buy these things, and they are not permitted in federal procurement. The reason why is because it is known, it is a fact, that these manufacturers have Chinese government ties. They have ties to the Chinese intelligence community. They have ties to the Chinese military. And we know that these devices, these cameras and systems, actually have backdoors built into them. They have vulnerabilities, known and unknown. So there are known vulnerabilities that remain unpatched. Every time they're found, a typical vulnerability gets patched pretty quickly. Hikvision either doesn't patch it, or if they do, they make the patching process not work. So it may be very cumbersome to patch the cameras, or somewhere along the lines, the patching process malfunctions and you end up with a still unpatched camera, or even better, perhaps somewhere along the patching process it fails and never actually patches the vulnerability. So what makes this problem worse? A couple of things. These cameras are actually pretty hard to spot. It's not just Hikvision and Dahua that label these cameras. So Hikvision and Dahua are the OEMs, so they were the original equipment manufacturers. They sell these cameras under their own labels, but other companies also sell the cameras under their own labels. And maybe you haven't heard of Dahua, maybe you haven't heard of Hikvision or Hikvision, but maybe you've heard of a company called, I don't know, Tyco Security, maybe Panasonic, maybe Alarm.com or Hitachi. All of these manufacturers source their cameras from Hikvision or Dahua. So some of the cameras that you get from these manufacturers may have the problems too, and that's what makes this problem a little bit more complex, because you have to know the long list of OEMs, and OEM is, again, that term, original equipment manufacturer, the company that orders the cameras and then relabels them from Hikvision. So you have to know who is ordering these cameras, who is relabeling them. And my suggestion, there's a couple of ways to remediate these issues, but my suggestion is just start off with segmenting them in the network and not having remote access or unprotected remote access. We recommend VPNs. So again, I don't take a hardline stance that we need to go out and rip these cameras out just yet until we know a little bit more, but I will take a hard stance that if these cameras are open and can access the internet or be accessed from the internet without any kind of firewalling or any kind of protection, they need to be addressed very, very quickly. In the email I write, how bad is the problem? It's very, very bad. We've got, even locally, we've got some local shops that sell these cameras. They're actually lobbying to get the cameras unlisted from this ban. I disagree with that. In fact, my position is that these video security places that are doing this don't have a full understanding of exactly the extent of the problem. And I have sympathy for them. I understand that their bread and butter is under attack, and I very, very much feel terrible for them because they're stuck in a difficult position. But the answer is not to continue using a known bad product, a product that is known to attract cyber attackers, cyber risk, and is known to be a problem. So this problem is pretty complicated, and if you have any concerns about it, definitely reach out to me. Two types of ransomware attacks that I want to talk to you about today. The first one I'm not going to talk about very much, and the reason why is because we're very familiar with. So that first one is an attack where an attacker will encrypt your data and keep you from using it. Defending against that attack and protecting against it is actually very, very simple, because we just have backups and we restore your backups and you're up and running again. The second type of ransomware attack, though, is much more devastating. The reason why is there's not really a great way to protect and defend from it. Here's what I mean by that. The ransomware attacker will come into your system, will exfiltrate your data. That means we'll take your data off of your network and will also encrypt it on your network. And what happens here is that the attacker will hold your data hostage off-site in their possession and threaten to release it into the public if you don't pay. That's why it's difficult to defend from it and to protect from it. The only way we can see if the data has actually been exfiltrated is to look at router logs and firewall logs, and a lot of times that traffic can hide behind legitimate traffic, so it is incredibly difficult to see that traffic and separate it from other traffic. So some of the things you can do, definitely recognize the pointers of an attack, the signs of an attack. Keep your team trained and aware of what a phishing attempt might look like, because a lot of these attacks come in through phishing attempts. Avoid having open ports to the internet. So I understand remote access is convenient, but when our clients ask us for remote access, we insist on using a VPN. This limits the access points to your network and is a great way to keep those types of attacks at bay. Finally, if you do business with a company that holds your data, hold them accountable. find out what they are doing to protect your data, find out the methods that they are doing if they're taking it seriously. So some examples of those businesses are going to be accountants, attorneys, law firms, medical and medical related businesses. These businesses are all tasty morsels to an attacker, and they need to take extra measures. They're also required by law and by regulatory bodies to take these measures. So make sure you're asking your vendors how they're protecting your data. Moving on to the Cassaya Aftermath. I've got a whole lot more than that I want to say about this, but I am going to hold my tongue because there's still a lot of information coming out. We don't know enough about it, but here are the facts. The facts are coming out that the FBI held the decryption keys for the ransomware or the encrypted data for over 3 weeks before releasing them to victims. And they claimed that they got these keys by means of a trusted partner. So I'm not going to get into speculation into that. I'm not going to talk about that at all. Where I'm going to go with this is that it's clear to me that businesses, you and I, are on our own when it comes to these events. We are responsible ultimately for our own data. We are responsible for our own protection. We are responsible for taking the necessary measures. And even if law enforcement can help, sometimes they won't. Sometimes their hands might be bound by something else that we don't know about. That's why I'm leaving any judgment. I'm not going to jump to it. I'm just going to wait until things come out. But there may be factors outside of our control that prevent us from recovering from an event quickly. So that is why I submit to you that we have to take the things that are within our control, that are within our realm of influence, and address those things first. So again, preparedness, backups, how we're watching the network, how our employees are behaving, any behavioral issues that we need to address. And those behavioral issues often come out through phishing tests and through training. All of those things we need to do. We need to take responsibility for them and take charge for them instead of assuming that we'll just breeze through an attack. So that's what I'll say on that. Moving on to the macOS Unpatched Vulnerability. So our team was made aware of an unpatched vulnerability involving Apple computers, and we quickly moved to block the attachments that were coming in via email that could be used to gain access to these systems. So that was great. I'm very proud of our team for doing that. The next step is, though, to make sure that all of your Apple devices, your Macs, your iPhones, iPads are patched and fully patched with the latest updates to make sure that your systems are safe. And finally, the last thing I wanted to discuss are contingency plans. So technology seems to be inevitable for many folks these days. We just resigned to the fact that technology's here and we just have to deal with it. And while that may be true to some extent, it still doesn't negate the fact that we should be prepared for a disruptive event involving our technology. It could be as simple as a power outage or as complicated as a hurricane. And being prepared for something like that could be as simple as the night before printing out our team's schedule so we can still service clients or make appointments and show up and get business done versus waiting for the morning of. This may be practical for your business or it may look different in yours, but something as simple as that could keep your team productive and profitable and keep your clients serviced while others are scrambling to figure out what to do, and they've got a lot of overhead sitting around twiddling their thumbs trying to figure out if they're going to get to go home early or not. So again, I submit to you, it's your responsibility to be prepared for a disaster or an event. And if you have any questions or if you want to brainstorm how you can prepare, I'm happy to do that. That is truly my joy. I love meeting with you and having these discussions. We may not come up with an answer in our first go at it, but maybe we'll come up with some great dialogue and some great ideas. And I'll leave you with this example. I have a friend who used to own a business here in the Tampa Bay area, a very, very successful business, and a hurricane came through. They had a power outage, and their entire business was crippled. All of their computers were in their main office. All of their systems were in their main office. They didn't invest in a generator. They didn't invest in any kind of redundancies. And they lost close to $1 million in business during the course of 1 week, all because they had no power. And when push came to shove, there was an electrical crew working a few streets away, and one of the owners went and bought them all a case of beer. They came over, and basically they just had to throw a breaker on a pole and brought them back online. So something really, really simple for an electrical crew was taking a business and completely crippling it. And so that's why I say, let's think critically. What are the things, what are the items that could keep our business running? Could it be a redundant internet connection? What's $50, $100 a month if it keeps your business operating through an outage, through your primary internet being out? Yeah, it can be as simple as $100 a month, right? $1,200 a year. You could lose $1,200 an hour just being down. So it's really not that big a deal. I know it seems like a big expense up front, but it really isn't. It's a great investment, and it pays dividends if you ever have to use it. So again, thank you very much for listening, for hanging in there, for your support. I appreciate your business very much. Love you all very much. Thank you. You mean the world to us here at DataCorps and to our team. And if there's anything I can do for you, you've got the link in the email to set up an appointment with me. I love to hear from you. I love to chat with you, and I love to meet with you. Please reach out. Thanks, and have a blessed day.